the Curriculum and Student Development Committee of the Madison Board of Education. I'm Steve Penn, and I'm joined by Mary Ann Connolly, and our other member is unable to make it tonight. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent, Gail Dollinghenge, to tell us what we have on the agenda and introduce our presenters.
Thank you. It's all about the high school tonight. It's a high school sweep. And we are highlighting 3 different aspects of programming. We're talking about our chemical hygiene plan. We'll be putting that up for readoption. And the program of studies is going to be presented, very few changes in that this year. And then we have an exciting international field trip to talk to the board about and seek approval for. So we're going to start with Paul Mezek, and Paul Mezek is our chemical hygiene officer, which is not usually a coveted role unless you really dig chemical hygiene. I have to say, I am so blessed to have Paul Mezek in charge of chemical hygiene in this district. He is meticulous, he is detail oriented, he is careful, he keeps me informed of every single inspection that he does, and that is a lot. So the aspects that you're seeing tonight in this plan and the overview is just a little tiny piece of who Paul is, and I just want to recognize and thank him for being Paul Mezek and in charge of all the safety.
Thank you, Gail. I appreciate it. So what I'd like to do this evening is I'm looking for the board's approval with revisions to the chemical hygiene plan with regard to that lab at the high school. Just to give you a background, the chemical hygiene plan at the high school is embedded pretty much in 2 major standards. There's a HAZCOM standard, which was designed in the 1980s for large companies that engage in like mass production of chemicals. And then about 10 years later, they recognized that laboratories and classrooms and research facilities are a little unique in the sense that they generally don't participate in mass production of chemicals or physical hazards. The variety of hazards are very different than they are in a major facility. And so the schools generally lean towards the lab standard to protect us and our students and the workers and all employees in public schools. And part of the lab standard requires that we have a written chemical hygiene plan. And that plan generally focuses on several criteria. One of them is the PPE, which is what we refer to as personal protective equipment. Another is the administrative protocols. So this would be like, what do you do in the event there's a chemical spill? How do you report an incident? How do you log or maintain logs of the equipment? How do you dispose of chemicals? Those sort of things are the administrative controls. And then there's these engineering protocols, which are how do we maintain the safety equipment in the building, like the ultraviolet radiation that we use for the goggles, or the shower that we use in case there's a chemical spill, or the eye wash station, or a fire blanket or fire extinguisher. And that whole plan requires that there be a chemical hygiene officer to implement that particular plan. By definition, chemical hygiene plan is defined as a written plan that an employer would set forth primarily to protect the employees, which in this case would be students, teachers, faculty, and in a workspace, which in schools are typically a laboratory classroom. It does adhere to the HAZCOM standards in addition to the lab standards. So the laboratory standard actually supersedes the HAZCOM standard, but it does take some of the HAZCOM standards, like for example, the way we label chemicals, whether you're in a manufacturing facility or in a school, that's a universal way that we label chemicals. So that's one example of how the HAZCOM standard finds its way into the laboratory standard. A lot of what happens in a classroom is related to what we call duty of care or standard of care. I like to refer to those as the laboratory behaviors. And this is really where we lean into this part of the chemical hygiene plan when it comes to liability. You know, what is that the teacher is doing to ensure the safety of other adults in the room and the students? And it comes in three parts. There's a duty of instruction. So like, for example, we want to make sure that we inform students that there's going to be a safety hazard possibly. There's a duty of supervision. So we want to ensure that teachers are watching the students, because unlike a manufacturing plant or place of business, the students aren't trained employees. So they're bound to make mistakes. So you want to have someone in there who's supervising. And then the other third part of the duty of care with regard to teachers in the classroom is making sure that those engineering controls like safety showers and the eye wash station and the goggle cabinet are accessible and free of any obstacles that the students can get to. So I can give you an example. You could have a teacher who conveys to the students that there's a physical hazard in a particular lab that they're going to be doing, tells them to wear goggles like they should, but then accidentally steps out of the room because they were distracted or needed to be informed by another teacher or whatever. It's something that happens. And so you've checked all the boxes, but you lacked in the duty of supervision. And so that's where the liability piece comes in. And so what I'm getting at is, how does this all apply to the Fab Lab? And so if you think about our Fab Lab, which is sometimes referred to as a makerspace or a hackerspace. I think that the hackerspace is a term people don't like because of the term hacker, but all three of those terminologies are used to describe these types of exploratory areas where students use a variety of machines to fabricate stuff. The Fab Lab indeed is considered a lab, and it's very limited in its ability for mass production. So under those wordings, it sort of falls under the laboratory standard. What's interesting about the Fab Lab is that it's a form of digital fabrication, which means that the students aren't actually interacting directly with the machine and what they're working on, like you would see in, say, a tech ed environment, where a student's using a bandsaw and they have a piece of wood and they're literally going with the bandsaw. These students are interacting with a computer, and then the computer interacts with the machinery. So you might think for a moment, well, why have any safety issues if they're not really interacting with it? It turns out when these machines fail, and they often do, for example, the CNC machine, it has a little carbide tip, that's going to break, that's going to need to be replaced. Sewing machines break. The 3D printers use high heat elements. Sometimes those malfunction and then the filament gets all clogged up. That needs to be worked on. And when students are in that environment, they're actually physically touching the instruments. And so they may need to abide by certain safety protocols. So that's why the Fab Lab is on here. There are some general guidelines that I think should just find its way to any classroom, simple ones, such as there shouldn't be anyone allowed in the classroom if the adult's not there, so the door should be locked. In the event that students are using some of the equipment, there is an appropriate level of attire. So if you're using a piece of machinery like a printer, you might want to, as a teacher, ensure that a student doesn't have a lot of dangling clothes that could get caught in something like that. Seems like common sense, but these are here to not just remind students, but also to remind teachers how they should be operating in the classroom. Other general machine operation guidelines would be, even if the classroom is open, if there's nobody in the room to supervise as an adult, we don't want students operating those machines without adult supervision. And of course, we want to make sure that when we are operating those machines, that they are in proper working order and that they have the proper emergency shutoffs features that are working. I'm going to go through a couple of the tools that are there that need some attention. One of them is the laser cutter. The laser cutter has to be vented either through a venting system or through a filtration system. The unit that we have in the school uses a filtration system. So we want to make sure that we have on the books that any teacher in there recognizes that this is something that needs to be maintained and changed, so we have that in there. In addition to that. That particular machine, in some cases, there's not an OSHA standard, so we kind of have to go to the manufacturer's operating manual. In this particular machine, they recommend the type of fire extinguisher that you use. And just to give you a background, there's a variety of fire extinguishers, but when you're dealing with electrical or metals, you typically want to use what's called a Class D, which is a dry extinguisher, or you can use a carbon dioxide extinguisher. The problem is many of these Class D extinguishers have chemicals in them that are create a coating. And so you might have what might be a very small little fire that maybe someone reacts really quickly and uses a fire extinguisher. And if you don't have the right one, you might destroy the entire piece of equipment along with other equipment. And so this particular manufacturer recommends a Halotron extinguisher, which really reduces any collateral damage in the event you need to use one. And that is a picture of the one that is currently in the room as we speak today. The CNC machine, this is the one machine where a student might be required to wear goggles. It does come with an ANSI Z87 rated plastic. If you're wondering what that is, it's the American National Standards Institute is an organization that basically tests equipment. So when OSHA says you need to have impact resistant goggles, they refer to this organization who will rate particular goggles and perform the particular tests to give it that rating. So again, it doesn't look like it's a problem unless that carbide tip breaks and a student then has to access that, in which case they would open that here. They should probably have goggles on at that time. Another piece here that we don't often think about is that, you know, we're not always concerned with the people who are immediately in the laboratory, but we also have to be concerned with like custodial staff, for example. So anything that's sharp can't just be disposed of in the garbage, it has to be disposed of in a proper container. And so we have a sharps container that would be used for this machine, as well as the sewing needles and any other sharps that you might find in there. And again, the plan is designed to be somewhat flexible. That's the purpose of a chemical hygiene plan, because we don't know what type of instruments and tools we may have in the future. The 3D printers, they come with some firmware, which is a software that prevents them from operating under overheating circumstances. They also have sensors. A lot of these machines operate autonomously without the presence of a human. So we want to make sure that if these things are printing at night, if that sensor fails, it actually shuts the machine off. Otherwise, we end up with a situation where we have plastic filament that just clogs and can damage the equipment. Additionally, we want to make sure that the filaments that we use are appropriate for laboratory settings. And so we use what's called a polylactic acid filament. It's appropriate because it has the correct temperature range, and it produces products that are applicable to classroom settings. And then lastly, we have the soldering facility, the soldering station. We want to make sure that we're using a lead-free solder at all times. So this would be information that someone who's making the orders for this particular laboratory would want to know. We also want to make sure that we're working with circuit boards for the students, that we want to use what's called ROS boards. Those are ones that are restricted of hazardous substances. And those substances include things like lead, mercury, cadmium, biphenyls. And there's also a smoke absorber, which you see in the picture in the upper left. And so that's just to absorb the soldering smoke as students work at the station. And lastly, there should be a heat resistant mat, which already exists, but just to ensure that it's there. One, so we don't burn the workstation, and two, some of the equipment, like for example, if a student was working on a camera, the flash that's on the camera has a capacitor, and you want to make sure that that doesn't discharge. And those mats are there for that purpose. They're electrostatic discharge mats so that things don't discharge unexpectedly because they are working with electrical components. Those are primarily the additions that we're looking to have in the chemical hygiene plan. So I'm looking for the board's approval on those. Does anybody have any particular questions? Go ahead.
reading through the entire plan and reading through the additions, I'm struck by virtually the hundreds of areas that require oversight and keeping track of, you know, I mean, some of these are daily activities like cleaning goggles, you know.
Absolutely.
So my question is, who does that? One, and two, how do we track that? We have check sheets or something where we sign off on? or-
Absolutely. So.
You asked his favorite question.
Yes. So in terms of duty of care, the daily cleaning would be on the classroom teacher with after each use. At the high school, at the chemistry level, we actually purchase goggles for the students, and the ones that we keep in the goggle cabinet are actually extras, and that seems to have worked out really well, especially during COVID and the practice that we implemented. And so each goggle cabinet has on it a log sheet. And then twice a month, I also go in and I test the systems, not just to clean the goggles and turn a dial. I actually use what's called the dosimeter once a month. And that dosimeter measures the ultraviolet radiation emitted by the bulb in the goggle cabinet, because just turning it on doesn't actually mean that you've radiated the goggles. And those sheets are all collected and kept in a chemical hygiene book that dates back to at least 2010, is my recollection. And then each month I send Gail and all members of the faculty, if it's at Polson or if it's at Daniel Hand, a list of we call it the chemical hygiene log. And it has in it from goggles to the eye wash station, to the shower station, to the GFCI outlets, to the gas knobs to make sure that they're operational. I'm probably missing something, but there's a couple other things on it that I do check and send over.
Requested repairs.
Yes, so I keep a running list of anything that went wrong. So for example, if a goggle cabinet has failed, I'll write on there, goggle cabinet needs a UV, this is our anticipated repair, I date it, and then I follow up, I change the colors on it so it's easy to read when that repair was made, so we have a log of it. Additionally, at the end of the year, I send Mr. Salutary what's called a HAZCOM review. That's something you're supposed to do. And that's kind of like a summary of everything that happened throughout the year. That may have chemical pickup. So every other year we look for a facility. Name escapes me at the moment. Harbor something.
Yeah.
Clean Harbor.
Yeah.
They come out. There's also a log of all the chemicals that are currently listed, where they are, and that's important for first responders. So in the event that some first responders have to enter the building, they need to know what chemicals are in what rooms, and that tells them what extinguishing equipment they would use.
Is there an inventory or keeping track
Yes,
that the chemicals that are supposed to be there haven't disappeared somewhere?
we use Flinventory, which is an online system, and we have a teacher who's dedicated to maintaining that. He's in the chemistry department. And so as we order chemicals, we adjust the inventory, and as we use chemicals, we adjust the inventory, and as we dispose of chemicals, we adjust the inventory.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear.
We have the right person for the job.
Clearly, it's a big job.
It's a big job.
And there isn't a lot of room for it.
Grammar school?
Yeah,
No.
do you have anything to do with?
I do not. The grammar school doesn't really participate in the labs in that capacity that I would need to go down there. There's probably very little engineering controls, other than maybe goggles that the kids might use. But other than that.
So who takes care of that OSHA? Checklist, I wanna say.
Gail, do you want to add to what happens at the elementary?
It would be the nurses primarily, look out all of the,
Because
and the head nurse.
right, does not every school that I know of has a person like you.
No, so
Usually it's middle school and high school.
middle
Yeah.
school and high school would be typical.
But in the school that I was in.
Yeah, there are a lot of schools that do not have chemical
Yeah.
hygiene officers. The way the law reads, if I remember, is it's defaulted. If you don't have, it defaults to a principal, and then if not the principal, the superintendent.
So I think that's,
Ooh,
That's how it works legally.
we,
That's why yes,
I can see it.
yeah,
And I just want to point out, you did see my socks, right? I have
Hazmat.
my
Hazmat.
hazmat radiations. You know.
Back to the Fab Lab.
Sure.
Um, When I went through the Fab Lab, I had questions about whether that was the appropriate space in terms of air handling and the ability, you know, to vent and
Yeah,
you're comfortable with.
I haven't had a problem or seen a problem. There hasn't been anything that's come to my attention that anyone has mentioned was a problem. Really, it's been a non-issue. It's fine. The filtration system that we use with the laser is perfectly acceptable. Hasn't been an issue at all. And the soldering station has not been an issue at all. Those are really the two primary venting issues.
Well, you know. Great presentation, I really appreciate it. I mean, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart for a variety of reasons. My professional background, but, you know. Without going into detail, and I graduated from high school in 1969. My very best friend died as a result of not following these practices
Mhm.
in the high school.
Really.
You know, not this high school, but,
Mhm.
you know. So we've come a long way from those days. You know, in terms of managing chemicals and so forth, but. You know, I love to see. How complete it is in the oversight and the regular checkup, so. You know, it's a very important job and I appreciate what you do on that and. I appreciate your report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul.
Any other questions?
thank you, Ms.
I'm
Ms.
all set?
Slow job.
Okay, thank you very much. I
Go home
appreciate
to
your
your
time.
family, thank you. Next, we have an overview of the program of studies and some of the changes that are made, which are not too many. Al Richard is here and TJ Solitaire.
Thanks, I'd like to thank Mr. Mezek for his expertise and just incredible work as chemical hygiene officer, and thankfully. You know, we don't have to be experts, Dr. Cook, you and I on this because of Mr. Mezek and all the work he does, which is greatly appreciated. So, Melanie, you're the clinker. All right, so I just want to say thank you to the board for inviting us this evening. It's that time of the year as we're getting ready to transition into the scheduling process for the 24-25 school year. It always seems like it's early, but it's never early. We don't have as many changes as usual now that we're finally getting through all of the different cycles for each of the content areas. The changes will be mostly specific to whatever areas working through Gail's department around curricular work, which was really exciting. And, you know, it was a daunting task to get here, right, Gail? I think where we're at, but it was definitely well worth it. One just quick update, not related completely to the program of studies. Gail, can you click on that hyperlink?
That I just did on the
On the
profile.
profile?
Yeah, this was the link.
It's not shown, it's not displaying.
Oh, it's not. Okay. Huh, why? Let's see. Hmm. Mm-hmm.
No. It's okay if it doesn't show, we could talk about it and then people can look at another time.
Talk amongst
Yeah,
yourself.
so-
Yeah, talk about it.
By the time you get it up and running, we'll be on to the next slide. Or I guess our presentation is completed.
That was easy.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, no, it's still not doing it.
Yeah, I would say,
Talk about it.
yeah, I wouldn't worry about it, just the school profile is, you know, basically our advertisement sheet that, you know, we send out to colleges and universities with a great deal of information. You know, we thankfully got to move away from all the content around the pandemic that was listed there. And we added our capacities related to our profile of a graduate. You know, it looks like a really good document. That is a working document that we update regularly. If you click on this link, when you have a moment, you can take a look moving forward to what that school profile looks like. It's literally a two-sided, just one-page document. And again, I thought just a nice addition, adding the capacities that relate to our profile of a graduate.
Yeah. Oh, Gail, did you do that? So just a brief overview of the changes. There's a couple of department specific changes and we'll go through those one by one. But in the CTE department, we're excited to announce a new partnership. So we've had partnerships with UConn, we have partnerships with Goodwin, we now have a partnership with Quinnipiac. And so students that take both of our TV production intro to TV courses in the same school year. So providing they take both of them in the same school year, they will receive a 3-credit course from Quinnipiac. So that is equivalent to both our introduction to TV and TV production. If they don't take them in this school year, that is still okay. They don't have to, they just wouldn't earn the transferable dual credit. Another addition in CTE is just a prerequisite change. So prior to taking computer-aided manufacturing, before you needed to take technical drawing and specification, but now there's an or option. So as long as you take either the tech drawing course or the Foundations of Engineering course, you can take computer-aided manufacturing. It's truly just to increase access to students. And then one course that we're removing or suggesting for removal from the course offerings is our Little Hand Nursery program. Although we are sad to see it go, it has not been offered since 2016. And just out of the pandemic, it is something that has never been revived. A lot of the materials that were previously used have just, I would say, expired at this point. We would need to completely get all new materials for that. And based on student interest, we don't see the value there. So we're proposing to remove that from our course offerings.
All right, so I'm going to talk briefly about some changes in the mathematics department. First and foremost, this will be a discussion over the next 3 years. But we are taking the first step in moving away from the level 3 math courses that are offered at Daniel Hand currently. Those are considered our lowest level courses. We're actually really excited about this opportunity. We're doing a lot of work this year as we start to transition away. So when students receive their program of studies electronically in January, the current integrated algebra and geometry level 3 course or the algebra 1 level 3 course will no longer be offered. And what our goal is moving forward when we come back next year, the geometry level 3 course will not be an option. And we come back 2 years after this, we're moving away from algebra 2 level 3 as well. We are putting a lot of supports in place, working with the math department, special ed department, our interventionists to plan for this, but this was something that was a long time coming, and it's definitely feels like the right time. And we're doing a few things this year as well that are proving to be very successful. I give the math department, our special ed department, a lot of credit because there's a lot of work going into this transition, which is a pretty significant move. And I like the fact that we have a 3-year plan and we're not just doing the Band-Aid approach and just removing all the courses at one particular time.
Is any of this a result that the work at the middle school is covering more of these, or it's not related to that?
You want to start with that or you want me to?
No, not really. It's really not as a result of that. It's actually something that we've been watching for many, many years, as TJ said. Really looking to see if students who are in that level 3 track ever move tracks to be a level 2, which is our college level. And that doesn't seem to happen. So the mathematics department at the state level has come out with a statement that really also just points out the importance of having equal access to higher level courses. So it was a good time for us to do it. And as TJ said, we're taking a real thoughtful approach of how we support the kids and also support the teachers who need to meet the needs of every kid in their class. So it's a huge challenge.
I just follow up on that from the opposite perspective instead of middle school, like from the high school perspective. Am I correct in understanding that the lower level course, level 3, will no longer be available in a stepped fashion? So there will be like differentiated learning and other supports for the students who aren't as strong at math to try and bring them along.
I think
to the rest of the
that's a fair explanation, Seth, and what we're working on doing, we're using a co-taught model right now. And building the capacity of our teachers in that model, because a lot of, teacher training, for example, in schools doesn't really focus on that. But really looking at a great deal of ongoing formative assessment to see which students need immediate support. It could be just on, a touch up of a skill they're confused with, or differentiating in the instruction to meet all of the students, which again, we're lucky to have such great teachers, which is a plus that will make this a smoother transition. And not, like Gail mentioned, we looked at data over the years and we've seen the students that have been in these level 3 courses just remain there. And that's not ideal for anyone. This is a good move for all students. It will take a somewhat different approach, from our teachers with the formative assessments and how to address it. The capacity of our teachers right now in the co-teaching model has improved significantly over the years, and I give them a lot of credit because that's not an easy task to do, especially at the high school level. So we feel like we have the pieces in place, but it's going to be based on the students in front of you, and when we do the formative check-ins to see what type of work we need to do immediately. And then what type of work on the intervention level beyond the classroom setting as well is a whole nother piece we're working on. So it's an exciting move, and it's definitely a big move for us. But as Gail mentioned, this is a state expectation as well. It's a NEASC expectation. Just in timing wise, this was right for us.
Yeah, it's like on the one hand, you can see the benefit of that in terms of advancing students and getting them to a higher level math plane than maybe they came into high school with. On the other hand, you worry a little bit that, a lot of kids go to college or on to careers that don't have mathematics requirements.
What happens to those kids?
And yeah, like I'm thinking,
They can't do it.
for some kids, it's okay to be a little bit behind in math classes,
Mhm.
but get better grades in those classes that will contribute to them getting into a better school if they're going for a history major or health and human services or type of major. So I think my beef probably is more with the state, and I'm just like concerned for those students, but I'm very happy to hear that there's a plan to deal with it, like the differentiated learning and supports and co-teaching or whatever that, and it's not just drop them in and sink or swim.
So Christine Justice is the department head. She's been very carefully taking a look at how other schools that have done this and what they have offered as kids go through the pathway. So they're and also Justin Kaiser, who's the math coach up there, working in tandem, and they're looking at how they might communicate different options for kids as they go up through. But that's why it's phased in over time. We haven't figured out everything. We just know that it's the right thing to do for our algebra and geometry kids to start. So it's something that we've been working on. We're also working closely with Paulson, because Paulson also identifies students very early on who need level 3 or need more support. We're looking at data that goes back, and also individual stories, and we're tracking individual stories of students that start at Paulson and then go to the high school, and kind of figuring out what their needs are and what their profiles are. So it's more work to be done. This is just the beginning, as TJ said. But I feel very confident that the math teachers are more than ready and see the opportunity that it provides for more kids.
Thank you.
Any more question?
Well, basically, it was, I was just worried about the students who, are just are not mathematically inclined, and what happens to them, and if they can't. I mean, if we do have a math tutor or a math coach, and we have, I'm sure, extra help.
We have interventionists as well, and
So
if
that-
you look at the research, the schools that make these moves, the students that you're referring to usually do better in math, and that's what we're hoping for as well. So I'm sure we'll talk about this more next year, and again, we'll have this as one of our topics 2 more years from now.
Yeah, I want to add that we just added those people, those individuals for the math department in the past couple of years, and the board supported that. So now we're in the ready position to actually do something. Before we weren't, we weren't ready. We didn't have an interventionist for math at all for many, many years. Nor did we have a math coach. That's all board supported.
You know, it occurs to me that if you have an interventionist and you do some differentiated learning and that sort of thing, but you're closing up a couple courses, it may actually be an opportunity to save money too, that offsets the cost for the coaching.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the intent. The
No.
intent is we're doing what's right for kids, but,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know, you know, I think the more we can make kids successful, the better the whole system is.
Yeah, it's a common belief. When it comes to math in particular. That there are those that are good at it and those that aren't. And that just kind of goes with you through life.
Mhm.
Now, the research really doesn't support that, and in point of fact. There are changes in instructional practice that take kids that have had long years of struggling with math. And creating kids that are very capable and competent by doing things differently, so. You know, I applaud this direction, I mean, it's a learning process for everybody. But, you know, we get locked into thinking, you know, that is a discrete ability. And, you know, to some extent it is, but not to the degree that most people think.
Great, and to be continued for sure on that topic. Our next mathematics department update.
I have an update,
Oh, sorry, 0-0 at the half.
1-0 us.
Tigers? No tigers.
We're on the fourth quarter,
Yes.
just saying, okay.
Love the update.
Sorry.
So our next, and I do have the video running, I'm not watching that.
I-
I know it's- I know it's not- that's not-
I don't have the video.
I do have the video running, but not officially right now.
Okay.
So our next change is just a simple prerequisite change that pertains to our geometry level 2 class. The C+ in red used to read a B-, and we thought making this change would just give more students access. None of the changes we're making limit access to our courses. This just increases access. And we also have an override process. So if a student earned a C, they can still override into that particular course, but again, looking to increase access. We have a UConn ECE discrete math course that's been at hand for several years now. We've been waiting to make this change. You know, based on the content of the course, it was currently running as a level 3, which was just not the right level for that particular course. We are planning to move that to its appropriate level per our math department's review as a level 2 course. And we actually think this is going to increase access as well and gives a lot of students another UConn ECE course in mathematics they can consider taking. Moving away from mathematics and PE, health and wellness department, these are the departments that are currently working on finishing up the curricular cycle. And we are, as we discussed last year, removing the PE and Health 10 and PE 11 courses. This was the last year they were intended to run based on the changes in the curriculum. We have some new course offerings, which if you just look at the names, look excellent: Leisure PE, Outdoor Adventure, Net Games, and Lifetime Pursuits. These will be in the program of studies for the upcoming school year. If you look in the course catalog pull out here, you will see for the 24-25 school year that an incoming 9th grader will be able to select either leisure PE or recreational games. And then as a 10th or 11th grader, they'll get to select one of those 4 options that are listed as well. We also added a note because we anticipate there to be a lot of interest in these particular courses. If a senior, for example, has already met the requirements for this particular department for the credits of 1, for example, in PE, they can still select one of those courses or 2 of those courses if they're interested in, you know, having a course that they enjoy taking. So we're excited for those and for the next school year. And the PE health teachers have done an incredible amount of work, you know, over the last couple of years, and we're looking forward to the end of that just because of the offerings for our students.
In the science department, there is one change. Basically, the traditional pathway for students has them taking chemistry in grade 10. What the science department decided to do was open up some options for grade 10. So allowing grade 10 students to now take biotech or environmental science, which has traditionally been a grade 11 only offering. Now allows students to make some choice when it comes to where they want to take chemistry. There's a great correlation between having exposure to algebra 2 and being successful in chemistry. Typically, students take algebra 2 in their junior year, so this will allow them to take chemistry in their junior year, but also still give them some grade 10 options for science, so that they're at least still taking science courses for a minimum of 3 years. And then the world language department, there are 4 revisions in the course descriptions. The course descriptions are at the end of the presentation for you. And these are anticipated to go before the board in January. So Jenna Guzzi will be here to present a little bit more, but I wanted to just let you know that that is sort of to come at the January meeting. And then also in world language is the addition of American Sign Language 2. So we presented ASL 1 last year, and so this is just the next course in sequence, which we're excited to offer. The student interest has been great. We anticipate needing to run many more sections of this, but we're excited to be able to offer the ones that we're able to. That concludes our presentation. Like I said, all of the course descriptions are at that end for you to view. And then the website will also be updated once all of the everything's approved. We'll work to update the website with some of these new offerings. Any questions?
Sounds good.
Well, but a comment. I mean, it's really great to see some of these changes. I love, you know, when it was presented previously on the PE changes, you know, it is so responsive to student interest and trying to make lifelong involvement, you know, I mean, it's a curriculum area that in most high schools is long overdue, so I love to see that, you know, it looks exciting and you know, I'll be looking forward to hearing what the student response is to these as these offerings come out, you know, because I think they'll jump all over the place. We'll see, but you know, as always, you know, nice additions that are, you know, particularly with the statements about trying to create greater access. I mean, that's a philosophy and that's an idea that is being translated into, you know, this structural work. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the support.
There we go.
Not gonna stay for the rest of the game?
What, this game?
I know I should put, I think I have that too.
But it's set it up to a big screen.
Cover number 35.
So, Lisa, we are really excited about this presentation. I really want to go, but I don't think I can. But this is amazing.
Can anyone go?
And I think that, by and large, this came as an inspiration from your biotech course, is that right? From the work you've done in that, or?
Yeah, I mean, in part, it's all connected. So, hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elisa Bracco, and I teach biology at the high school. I'm also the advisor to the Eco Club and the Gaines Club. So, Ecuador and Galapagos Island. I'm here to propose an international field trip to these locations. Do I just?
Is it working?
Tip it up a little bit because you're trying to hit her laptop.
Oh, to the, I will be your clicker. No. It's not funny, I don't know what's going on with this thing. Oh, there it goes, yeah, it did, it's in on yours. Not the clicker, it can monitor. Is it moving on yours? It's moving fine on mine. This is just funky. Go, let me try this again. Now I get the guy who's there. No problem.
A little bit.
See if it works this time. Must have worn it out yesterday. Try it.
There.
Okay.
Okay, so just a quick overview of what I plan on talking about in my proposal. So I guess the inspiration really came from the fact that every year with all my biology classes, we have a unit on evolution. And I talk about Darwin and natural selection and the finches and the Galapagos Islands. And I always thought to myself, imagine actually going and actually walking on these volcanic islands and actually encountering with marine iguanas and the amazing, endemic plants and animals of these islands. So I think the experience of any kind of international travel, but particularly this one, because it's just so different, is the immersion in the ecology, the immersion in the culture, the language immersion, and altogether that experiential experience that you can't get in the classroom, that you can only get from pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and experiencing the world. So that's the impetus for this trip. Along the way, I am pretty confident that those type of experiences are going to spark passions in these kids for marine biology, for conservation, for cultural knowledge. They might want to come back and learn more languages. They will most definitely be inspired to be passionate about traveling again, because that's what travel does. So that's sort of where this came from, the idea. I talked to people who have run trips at the high school, and they gave me suggestions for different tour groups. And I went with EF Tours because they've been around the longest. They're very established. They are incredibly organized. And my point person there, Rachel, is the best I could ask for in a partner in a tour group. She is completely responsive. I have any questions, any concerns. We've met over Zoom. We've done email exchanges, and she gets me the information I need right away. So I feel very comfortable and confident with this tour group and with what they have to offer. In terms of their safety plan, very extensive, and I can provide you with all those details if you're interested. And just the fact that I am completely watched over with this organization. So I've been very pleased with their establishment and their protocols that are in place. This is a little bit more just about their protections. The trip is 9 days long, and the plan is for a nonstop flight from Boston to Quito. I think we are a day or two in Quito where we get to see some things, and I'll show you that in the next slide. And then it's a flight to Santa Cruz Island. And then it's a boat ride to various different islands there. So I didn't realize this. I thought you could take a boat from mainland to the Galapagos, but that would probably take the whole 9 days. So it didn't really, I didn't know that. A little more detail on what we do. We do get to explore Quito. I love the fact that we're going to actually stand on the equatorial line, 1 foot in the northern hemisphere, 1 foot in the southern hemisphere. So there's a cultural piece to it. Then we fly to the Galapagos Islands, the famed tortoises, marine iguanas. And I can't wait to snorkel. I'm very excited about that part. But yeah, so we have we're on a boat, and depending how big our group is, we may be with some other high school students or have the boat to ourselves. And we always have a tour guide who is completely fluent in what we're about to see in terms of the ecology and geology. And that's like our point person, along with our tour guide. So we have sort of a team along the entire time. We get back to Quito. We go to this unbelievable market that I read a lot about. That's on day 8, and then we fly out day 9. So it's pretty comprehensive. Again, another reason I like EF Tours, everything is sort of wrapped in to the price. What isn't included, just the passport fees and tips, pretty much. And again, I just was really pleased. I don't embark on these things lightly. I really did my homework here and I vetted this company and what they offered, and I'm really excited about what they put together for us. And that's the price per student. This is the first time I'd be running an international trip, so I'm thinking maybe from 14 to 20 kids. I don't want to get too big with this because I want it manageable and something that, you know, I can feel confident with. So anyway, thanks for listening to my proposal. Any questions?
Did you have one more slide?
Oh, yeah, I forgot, one other thing was, they actually have ways that students can fundraise for themselves. So the earlier kids can enroll in this, the more time they would have if they would like to arrange for the group of us to work on a fundraising bake sale or something, or individually, there are ways that they can fundraise. So that's another benefit of trying to get on this early, because I'm planning this trip. The proposal is for April break 2025, so roughly about a year and a half from now. I think that's the last slide, right?
Yes, that is one. I wanted to make sure you got to that.
Yeah, I could say that I went on a high school trip to Ireland and it was fantastic. Kids are great when they go on these trips. It's just wonderful. This is a great place.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited.
How are students selected?
How are students selected? I think we're going to advertise it in the high school, and there will be an informational session for kids to sign up and see, you know, if they're interested.
We had 100, so.
Oh, boy. I really, I don't even know how many kids will be interested. I don't know how this is going to go, but I do teach currently three biology classes, so I'll definitely talk it up with my students and, but, yeah.
I've been on board a long time and I've always supported these opportunities because they're fantastic. I don't mean in any way, shape or form to not support this. I just want to make sure you're thinking, because this is more of an adventure trip and it's out away from civilization to a great degree. And I'm sure EF already has this all worked out, but please just make sure that there's, you know, access to healthcare and stuff for
Yes.
kids if they get injured or get hurt, something like that.
Yeah.
I only say that because someone's wearing a boot on their foot.
Those are the iguana.
I definitely was impressed with their kind of safety net that they have established.
Okay, great.
Is there pre-work that students will be doing prior to the trip? Work they will be doing on the trip,
Mhm.
and work they will be doing following the trip.
Well, here's what I have learned, that EF will partner with certain universities, that if kids do extra work, and I don't know, to be honest, what that work is, they can have the opportunity to earn some credit, some college credit for this. So to be honest, I don't know the details about that. But in terms of, from our perspective as a whole group, I envision what I would like to do is sort of preload the kids before we go there. I don't want them going in not even knowing what we're going to see. I want them to get excited about what we're going to see. So I'm trying to think of how would we get together and maybe learn a little bit about the animals that live there, and a little bit. So I would love for them to have some context. So they go in there and say, oh my gosh, we talked about that and there it is. So from my perspective, I would like that.
I mean, from my perspective, there's tons of opportunities there in terms of history, you know, of
Oh, yeah.
science and evolution. I mean, I don't need to articulate that to you. I personally am gonna want to hear more, and it's gonna need to be worked out of, if you get 70 students that are interested, there's gonna be a process on choosing who goes and who doesn't.
Mm.
I'm gonna wanna know what that process is. you
Sure.
know. The other is, I just, for any international trip like this, I always want to look at what kinds of supports are in place around finances, so that these kinds of trips are not accessible only to those who are privileged, but others that have interest, but they may not have those resources. Now, you know, I looked through all your materials, so that, you know, there is opportunities to break it down over time and, you know, other things like that. But efforts to fundraise, that those numbers can come down into a place where someone who is very, very interested but may not have those resources, you know, would have access. It's just, you know, something I'm concerned about. Any other questions?
Looks amazing though.
Yeah.
Like all these trips, they just look amazing.
How many chaperones, Steve?
I mean, Jen.
It'll be the first field trip that TJ will chaperone.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Field hockey one.
Oh, really?
Seen the championship. that.
Yeah.
That's great.
See all the game.
And we won't see you on the golf course. 2 adults.
Thank you.
Thank you so
You're
much.
very welcome. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Were you riding a sea turtle? Is that how you hurt your foot?
No, but I will tell you, I traveled with EF as a teacher group. I was selected to be part of a group that went with them. We went out to Panama, down to Panama, I guess I should say, and it was absolutely incredible. So you talk about like the learning dirt. I mean, there's no downtime. You are on the go and learning and exposed to culture in every way, shape, or form on their trip. So it was an incredible experience as an educator. So I will tell you that those kids will be busy.
And we use EF all the time.
Yeah, no downtime at all.
See you
It's
there.
pretty awesome.
Thanks,
No,
everybody.
no, sorry, Mary Ann.
Thanks so much.
Have a great night.
You as well.
So they weren't. They're probably yelling and screaming.
All right. Issues, questions, anything else? Part of that,
Hours.
it is 6:27 and we